Okay. Yeah, people don't know what they're missing out on the before recording sessions.
I know, seriously. I'll just let him keep on guessing.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's nice to compare notes for a couple of minutes, after a week of going in 4 or 5, 6, 7 different directions. It's just nice to know that. Again, we're all in the same boat. We're all feeling the same pressures. We're all questioning the same things. And I think sometimes it just helps to just put it out there and get a little bit more. And like just hearing about the genius community makes, I'm glad to know that information. And the Live Your Passion, I had no idea. If they offered it, I don't remember that at all.
So
So,
just re-engage with it. And I can't imagine they wouldn't give you a second opportunity.
uh-huh.
Yeah.
So Gita, did anybody read this week? Because
I did.
I did at the very start of when we saw each other last. I read like 3 days and then I kind of tapered down because things got crazy.
I got chapters 8 and 9 under my belt, so I'm feeling good about that.
what have I done? So I can go back to those. It's 10 where I was just getting started. So but I do have notes on those chapters. So good. Okay, I can participate.
Katie, I'm sure you read all the way through and did all your assignments and took all your noble notes, right?
No, not yet. Well, I read chapter 12, but if I'm being honest, I was not completely, sometimes I'm just not dialed in. Like I'm reading it, but I'm not dialed in. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I'm up to 11. That well.
That's all right.
So I looked up quotes from that famous meditation teacher.
Oh, that's what that
And
was.
I took a few screenshots of
I forgot about that. So did I.
so this one says the cause of suffering is that the unbounded self is overshadowed by the world. Took me like 3 times to get that, and then I finally did. How do you guys feel about that? Do you want me to read it again?
Yeah.
The cause of suffering is that the unbounded self is overshadowed by the world. So the unbounded self, I'm assuming, is our soul. I'm assuming that's the part of us that cannot be bound. And when it's overshadowed by this physical world, meaning we forget that that's our true self, that's where we suffer.
So read it one more time for me.
The cause of suffering is that the unbounded self is overshadowed by the world.
World.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can do this too to see if you can see it.
Okay. I did look this guy up right after we talked last week, but I obviously didn't write anything down because I don't have anything on my paper here that was left over from last week. So
Did you now, Hani, you said you had a couple. Did you want to read
I
yours?
did, and I'm trying to find them because I made all these notes, and now I think I left them all in my tree house. I came inside today because I'm tending the neighbor.
I
But I
have.
think outside in my tree house.
You can go grab them, or I can keep reading. I just don't want to take over if you had some.
Let me go check really quick. I'm going to see if I left them out there. I'll be
Okay.
back.
what was another one you found?
Another one is peace can be reached through meditation on the knowledge which dreams give. Peace can also be reached through concentration upon that which is dearest to the heart.
So these are all quotes from the Yoga Sutras,
from
right?
Patanjali,
Yeah.
one of the world's most famous meditation teachers.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty, like, I got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 3 more. So I got 5. But this one I thought was interesting because it says peace can also be reached through concentration upon that which is dearest to the heart. And that makes me think, well, wouldn't God be what's dearest to our heart?
Yeah, I think that's probably what it means. Yeah.
And that's like the whole point, I think, of the meditation, right? Is to be practicing staying focused on God so that when we pass, we go northbound instead of southbound. Yeah, I found 8 and 9 to be pretty interesting. I wasn't underlining and as much as I normally do, but I do have a few. Honey, did you find them?
I didn't find it, and so I'm looking one more place.
Okay.
I very much looked him up, and it was really engaging, and I felt very connected to the thought that I had saved a bunch of stuff, made some scribbles somewhere, and you guys, this past week, since I saw you last, it just got like more and more compounded every single day, and it's not out of the norm for people, but it's just one of those things where I feel very much like I have so many things that are compartmentalized and haven't connected them all together. So I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, I think that's
Crazy. I read a lot about like the Yoga Sutras. Is that how you say it? Sutras, and like all the stuff that's connected to him as the founder. Is that what it was? Is he like the main person who brought yoga to the planet? Is that kind of what I was connecting to, or is that wrong?
I don't know.
Or is he the one that just kind of like reintroduced it from like the ancient time, or is he ancient? I guess I can't remember all the details.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
I found one. If you
Yeah.
need a minute to find yours.
Yeah,
Yeah, go for it. Keep
Okay.
talking. I'm looking and listening.
So the one I found says distractions arise from habitual thought patterns when practice is intermittent. And I thought that was pretty cool because that's basically saying, yeah, you start to falter because you don't practice your meditation. you only do it every so often, and that's why you can't get to where you want to be, you know.
Can you read that again, Katie?
It says distractions arise from habitual thought patterns when practice is intermittent.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But
There
that's
is
how
one that I found. There is one that I found that I hope this wasn't one that you shared, Shauna. Be compassionate towards, does that sound familiar
No.
so far? Okay, be compassionate toward those who are unhappy, be delighted for those who are virtuous, and be indifferent toward the wicked. I mean, it's pretty basic and it's pretty self-explanatory. I remember pausing on that one though last week when I read it because it's really, especially the people that are the regulars in our life, if they're regularly more erring on the side of negative or unhappy, it sometimes it wears on me personally of like trying to maintain my positivity and have compassion because I just want to kind of nudge them towards happy, like come on, be more like me, be happy.
Yeah.
But it's obviously it doesn't serve anyone to try to push someone to a place that they're not. Meeting them where they are is a much better option that serves the bigger picture a lot better. So
Yeah, my favorite part of that was be indifferent toward the wicked. I thought that was really cool because sometimes,
just don't give them a lot of thought, right?
yeah, sometimes I feel like we have to be compassionate towards everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so to hear be indifferent, that was a new concept for me, almost like it gave me permission to, like, I don't necessarily have to force myself to be compassionate if I feel that somebody's being wicked. I like indifferent. Indifferent is, it allows whatever is to be.
And there's no like real resonating emotion or connection to it. It's just like, meh.
Yeah, I don't have to take it on. I don't have to fix it. I can just let it be. So I thought that one was really cool. Yeah.
I do like that part too.
Another one is when the mind is still, the universe surrenders.
Yeah.
Mic drop.
I
got us
got,
all speechless.
I know. We're all like, nobody talk. That way the universe will surrender. Go.
There you go.
And then this one I thought was cool too. If we practice greedlessness, we will begin to understand not only where we have come from, but where we are going and how our karmas have contributed to where we are now. And the last one is, there is always a light within us that is free from all sorrow and grief, no matter how much we may be experiencing suffering.
Hmm.
And I've experienced that. Like, I know people who are in suffering, but still have this like light. They still are able to be happy or function, even though they're suffering. So I thought that was interesting. No matter how much we may be experiencing suffering, that light is still in there and it's free from sorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Like, both can be true at the same time.
That was good.
So
I am really liking these quotes. I found a bunch of them that I didn't find until right now. But
does anybody have anything from the Gita that stuck out to them this week? Rose, do you have anything?
We're talking about 8 and 9.
You can go anywhere. You can go
Okay.
to any chapter if there's something that you wanted to discuss or that just struck you in a certain way.
you're welcome. You got okay. I didn't. I'm still behind you guys on where I am in the book, and I thought about just like skipping the places that I hadn't read and just catching up. But I was like, no, I really like where I am, and I want to keep going. So, although a lot of this we've already discussed, there was a couple parts that really stuck out to me in the very, let's see, last part of chapter 6. I know it's a while ago. It was something about meditation. If someone else has something, go for it, because I did find it like 5 minutes ago. Now I turned the page.
I have something to pretty
really cool nugget, but go ahead, keep talking.
So chapter 8, page 158 says, if Arjuna can remember Krishna in the hour of death, he will be united with Krishna and enter into immortality. And then it goes on to say further down, whatever a person thinks about in life, his or her deepest motivations are likely to be the last thoughts at the time of death. So there is a continuity between this life and the next, and all the baggage of desire. I thought that was so awesome. All the baggage of desire and motivation goes right along with the soul. Who has no worldly baggage? Who will remember Krishna at the final hour? He hopes Arjuna will be such a one who has no worldly baggage, who will remember Krishna at the final hour. That's intense. So it looks like we're all getting reincarnated. I'll see you ladies back here in a couple.
I thought it was interesting. I had a session this morning, and she was telling she's gotten herself, she's out of the restaurant business into the chakras and the breathing and techniques and the more holistic way of looking at yourself and that sort of thing. And she was telling me about the guy that she follows, and I don't remember his name, but she said that and I said, well, what is he? Is he a coach? And she said, well, yes and no. Kind of sounds like your Teal. But he mentions every now and again that he remembers his past lives, and he remembers in the 12th century that he did, or he remembers 500 years ago when the community was doing this or this and that. And I was like, oh, well, that's not as shocking to me today as it would have been 2 months ago, because I'm hearing that this is possible. And it's not that I believe it yet, because, being the Catholic Christian that I am and the teachings I've had, and I think I know where I'm supposed to be going, but, to listen to something like this and to come back again. And I think it's interesting because I remember telling my mom when I was a teenager, maybe teenager going into college, and I just remember her saying to her that, I don't know why, Mom, but I love studying about the 16th. I'm sorry, the 16th and the 17th centuries. And I said, for some reason, it really resonates with me, and for some reason, it feels like home sometimes. And I thought, and I haven't thought about that in years, but that used to resonate with me when I was younger. And I couldn't find enough, historical fiction books or history books and about the kings and the queens and the way it was all run back then, and how they dressed and how they were living. And I don't know. So who knows? Maybe, maybe not. But that came to my mind reading through some of these passages the other day. I thought, you know what? I remember thinking that at one point.
Yeah.
Now, I can't remember. I don't think I can remember the previous life I came in from, but
Yeah, it's very interesting. I think there's something to it personally. I like to stay open-minded to all this stuff. So something that struck me is that it says like, oh yeah, you just think of me when you die. And I know we were talking about this last time. Think of me when you die, and then you're gonna go, you're gonna reunite with me, end up where you're supposed to be, and you'll never have to reincarnate again. But then in chapter 9, I run across this. Let's see how soon I want to start.
What
Those
page?
page 175, the bottom. Those who follow the rituals given in the Vedas, who offer sacrifices and take soma, free themselves from evil and attain the vast heaven of gods, where they enjoy celestial pleasures. When they have enjoyed these fully, their merit is exhausted and they return to this land of death. I thought once you made it, you were there. You're saying like, oh, when you have a certain number of credits, you get to go in and experience it all. And then when your credits are up, you're back down here. What? I feel like
I think when I was reading that, it was, the way I took it was, well, it's great that I don't know, let me just come up with an example. Like, it's great that you went to the front of the church and you drank the blood of Christ and you ate the host. But if you didn't actually realize God in your mind, then you didn't actually attain what you were supposed to. You might have done the action, but you didn't actually get there. Does that make sense? Like, get there with that belief?
yeah. Like you can do all the things, but it reminds me of when, so I'm like a big time Jesus lover, but I didn't used to be. I grew into that. And my one argument was, I can tell you that I believe in Jesus. I can tell you I love Jesus. I can do the good things and the nice things. But if I don't really believe it in my heart, you don't think Jesus knows that? Like,
right, exactly.
So
I think that's what it's saying. Yeah.
It's gotta it's like you've got to embody the belief. You can't just do the actions. Like there's a comedian who wears a little cross around his neck, and he was like, yeah, you see, I'm not religious, but I do wear this because I think of it like a wristband to like it'll get me in. Like he's like, hey, I bought the wristband.
Oh my gosh,
well, and that's kind of what it's saying. It's saying like, well, yeah, you did the rituals, so you'll get to experience it for a little bit, but then you got to go back.
Maybe that's what happened to me. Maybe that's what that dream was about, when I was like in the light and I was like, it was so peaceful and I didn't want anything. Maybe I got a taste of it and they were like, but you're still not there. So you're going back, but now you have a taste of it.
Yeah.
So this time around, you're going to be closer. This time around, you're going to study the Gita.
I still think it's our choice though, you guys. I really do. I just have this, and I don't have any proof, but I really believe that whatever this is about us reincarnating and maybe coming back for more isn't because we're forced or told, okay, your time's up here in this land of plenty, now you got to go back down to hell or whatever. I think it's about our desire for progress. And I keep on having this connection to, bear with me because I'm just in the moment having this connection. I remember when I was very young, I grew up in Ohio, and so it wasn't far from DC, like, whatever, 5, 6 hour drive. So a couple different times when I was quite young, my parents took us family vacation to DC, Smithsonian's, and, just go and do whatever you do in DC. And I loved it as a kid, but I remember going back as a much older adult and very much connecting to, yeah, I've been here, but it was like I hadn't been there because I saw all the things through such a different lens. I had such a greater appreciation for the history of our country. I had such a greater appreciation for the people that were involved in all the different things, sacrifices, whatever memorial we were at or whatever like historical location. It all hit me very differently because of the maturity that I had, gone through and had in between my first time and then that time. And so I kind of think about the lessons that we learn here in life. I don't necessarily believe that, wow, we were in such a great place with this amazing opportunity and we only seized 5 out of the 15 moments that we could have seized. But at the time we only thought there were those 5 gems of connections to make. And so it was only with perspective and further understanding that we realized, oh, I could have sunk my teeth into that moment a little bit more. I could have grabbed something else, but at least I'm glad I had the familiarity with it and I have a reference point now. So if I'm making any sense at all, I think that perhaps like even like what Katie was saying about referencing, you take the wine and the bread or whatever, like the host and I can't remember what you said, but I know what you were talking about. So, and you're doing it, but without like the real sunk in and like locked in connection and wanting to emulate the example of Jesus or whatever. I think that it's still just the act of doing that is something because it's engaging you into that place of connecting, even if the depth of connection might not be there in that moment. It's how you know to connect. It's all you know. So does that make sense? Does that resonate at all with anyone?
It does, because if you go through the ritual of receiving the body and blood of Christ, then you should feel something as you're doing that. You should be grateful when you go back to your pew and sit down and be grateful and thank him for being a part of your life. At least that's how I handle it, as opposed to, like she said, just going through the motions and okay. And it's funny because in so many Catholic churches, as soon as that's done, people just don't walk back to the pew. They walk out the door. They're there until that moment and then they leave. And it's like, we still have another 10 or 15 minutes here. Why are you just taking off? And it's like, that's the only reason they come. Or another complaint that the Catholic Church will have is that there are the Sunday Catholics. They only show up on Sundays and it's a ritual. It's, 10 o'clock mass, you are there. And if you're not there, shame on you. And if you were out partying last night on Saturday night, you still get up and you still go to mass the next day because that was what was instilled in them. The other is they only show up on Christmas and Easter.
Christmas and Easter.
Because they are the 2 most important dates, in the Catholic calendar, so to speak. And it's just, and that was my grandfather. He went to mass with us on the particular holiday that it was, one of those 2 holidays. Otherwise, he never set foot in church the whole time I knew him. So you have to feel something. It has to mean something. What's the point of going and sitting in church if you're not going to listen to the message, if you're not going to apply the message, if you're not going to figure out how these messages make sense to us in our lives now, then you shouldn't be going to church. I mean, it's not because you have to, it's because you want to. It's because you want to hear the messages. I know my brother gave up on the church years ago, and he said that It's the same message every Sunday, every year. Every year they read the same stories. I've heard those stories so many times. Well, that's because each time you hear it, you're getting a different perspective. You're getting a different feeling. It's a different time of year. It's a different year in the world. And maybe that has a whole new meaning to us now because of the way it's being presented. But he said it was so repetitious. He was just bored with it. And well, there's only so many pages in the Bible, right? There's only so many pages in the Gita. So yes, you're going to repeat things, and yes, you're going to review things, and yes, you're going to question things. So if you're going to go through the rituals, then they have to mean something, and you have to be grateful that you're a part of them.
But if they're being
And
forced,
to add, oh, sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. If they're being forced into it, which is a lot of times what happens, is the family forces you.
Right.
Then you never chose it. So then that becomes a habit of, I'm here because I'm being forced. And then once you realize you're an adult, you have free will, and you don't have to go if you don't want to, you're already disconnected. That's why it's so important that we don't push our children into a belief, and let them know that they have the free will and the power to, like, guess what? None of us know, but most of us are trying to figure it out, and you get to do that with us. Go ahead, hon. Sorry about that.
To add, not to be total devil's advocate, but to add a little layer to what you were talking about, Rose, I think that regardless of what motivates people to attend a service of some sort, worshiping whatever, or just kind of dialing into a higher divine of some sort, whether it's Catholicism or some sort of Christianity or whatever it is. I think regardless of what motivates people, I think that the fact that they're there, even if their intent isn't the same high level of some other people, or even if their mind is wandering and they're not really immersed into all that's being taught, or their reference point is such that they don't have the connection to all the depth that is in front of them. They don't even, like, it goes over their head or in one ear out the other. They're there, and it's something. And so I think that it's kind of one of those things where we all have our own practice or not, and it's no one's business. It's very private and sacred, and it's personal. And if we decide to share that, that's fine, but it's not for someone else to tell us we're doing it right or wrong. And so I really truly believe that, I mean, that's a lot of what, the charge and like the kind of friction within organized religion is about, people thinking they can tell you how you need to do it. So I think there's something to be said about allowing space for people wherever they are, in that path and on that, in that placement,
And
whatever place in their life they're in, right?
And I think that if you take what you just said and what Rose just said, it is aligning with what this paragraph in the Gita is saying, which is, do the rituals, show up, do it your way, and you will get some credit toward that. And, it's nobody's job to judge it, but that you will not actually be merging with God, which is the ultimate goal, unless you are doing it really, truly from your heart, unless you're leaving church, but that belief, whatever you're working on, is still resonant. It's still in you. It still resides in you. It's still showing up in your thoughts and your actions. That's when you're going to get to reach the ultimate goal and escape this land of death. I love that they call this the land of death. It is.
Well, now, see, when I hear the words land of death, I picture being buried 6 feet under the dirt with all the other people in the cemetery or wherever, or the ashes being scattered. To me, that's the land of death.
But where are the cemeteries?
Where are the cemeteries? What do you mean?
Where are the bodies buried in the cemeteries that you're talking about? Where are they? They're on Earth.
They're on Earth, correct.
So there's a lot of buried bodies on Earth. And so I think that's why this is the land of death. I don't think that's happening in the other dimensions.
Oh, I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. I didn't even go that way. Yes. Yeah, it probably makes sense. I wasn't looking at it from that direction.
Yes, Rose, you are validating the point right now.
Well,
That
because
is
the way
exactly
I
what
was brought up and the way I've learned and studied is that it may be my body that is here on earth, but my soul has departed. And that's kind of what they're saying in here too, right? Your soul departs. You leave that body behind and you move on to wherever it is that you're off to next. I'm not quite sure I can agree with the fact that my soul is coming back here for another chance or to try again, but I don't know exactly what it means for me or for people who have made mistakes, who have done the wrong thing, who have not reached out, not helped, or whatever. So what happens to my soul? I'm a good person, but I'm not doing all those little things that he wants me to do. Or I'm not as passionate about it as maybe you are, or she is, or he is. So how does the weight of our souls get judged? And so Krishna and all his avatars are judging us as we come to him at the hour of death.
I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's Krishna that is the final say. And it has nothing to do with whether or not we're good souls. It has to do with whether we're walking that narrow path or not.
Mhm.
You know, just like the Bible talks about the narrow path. Like this is the narrow path, but in the words of the Gita, it's the you're like, I'm thinking the monks, right? I'm picturing like what Jay Shetty did for 3 years. Like I'm like, okay, he tried it. It wasn't for him. He came back to us to help share with us everything he learned. But like, I can't imagine that he's going to make it because he came back to the world of distractions. It sounds to me, it says, those who worship me and meditate on me constantly without any other thought, I will provide for all their needs. So it sounds to me like, Rose, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you feel like life isn't all that bad. Like,
No, I think life is what we make of it. And I think that if we my personality is caretaker. If you look at the different personalities that we all fall into, I'm a caretaker. I've always put everybody else first. I've always taken care of everybody else. I've always been there when everybody else needs me, as opposed to worrying about myself. I've been an educator. I've worked with children and parents and teenagers my whole life. And I've raised a family, and I've been mom and wife and all those other, little pigeonholes that we put ourselves into. And now at this point in my life, it's like, 4 years ago, I looked in the mirror and said, who am I? Who am I? And what am I doing here? What am I supposed to do with the rest of my life? And that's how I found Jay Shetty. And that's how I got involved in all this. And I never dreamed I would sit down and read the Hindu Bible, so to speak. I used to think I'd read the Islamic words to understand that side of the world and where they're coming from and why they believe the way they believe. But I know, the Bible's been everything to me. So that's the word that I listen to. But like we said before, reading this, and I bet if we read the Islamic words as well, or any other religion out there, there's all these commonalities. They all have something to say, and they all believe that there's a God, there's a higher power out there. So for centuries, since people have been around, how can that not be true? If it's so many people in the world out there believe in some sort of God, in some sort of powerful word. So life is not all that bad. If you're a good person, life's not that bad.
Well, I guess my point was, then don't even need to worry about whether reincarnation is real or not, because you're okay here. You'll be fine when you come back. But it does say, those who worship other gods with faith and devotion also worship me. Arjuna, even if they do not observe the usual forms, I am the object of all worship, its enjoyer and lord. But those who fail to realize my true nature must be reborn. So what I think is happening, according to the Gita, is that if you merge with God, it's because you have learned to let go of all of the distractions, that you are truly focused on God, serving God, God's will, and that you're not like, oh, distraction. Oh, distraction. People, things, worries, suffering, all the distractions, pleasure, whatever it is. Like, if your mind wanders from God's will and how am I serving the Lord, then you are still caught up in the distractions of this world. So you, from what I understand, we have to learn to be completely focused on God if we want to merge back with him. And if not, like it said somewhere in here, we have to keep coming back until our karma is played out, which is basically our attachment to the distractions of this world.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it's a bad thing if we reincarnate. It's just, you're just not ready yet, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're not, we don't probably want to be there anyways. Like you say, Hani, like it feels sort of like a choice, right?
Yeah.
It
And
is.
I think there's points where we want to do something different. Like we get out of this life and still might have an appetite for more, but we want to be in pause. Like we decide we want to be a guardian angel for a while and just go out and, be a helper in a different way.
And maybe that is an option, but if it's not, like say this is the truth. We don't know. Say this is it, people. This is the truth. When everybody gets up there, they're like, what book was right? They're like, this is the one. And we don't have a choice. So we're gonna be reincarnated. But the reality is we have choices while we're here. We get to be somebody's guardian angel while we're here if we want to.
It's true.
We get to let go of our distractions and attachments if we want to. And if not, we get to keep coming back until we figure it out. Who knows?
Mm-hmm.
I don't hate it, I mean,
It's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it sounds like, most of this book is like a little bit less like dysfunctional than the Bible. There's a lot of dysfunction in the Bible. Which I used to think the Bible is so full of shit. Like none of this stuff is happening. Like these stories are so outlandish. And then one day I looked at the world and all of the toxic, outlandish shit that's actually happening and has happened. And I realized, wait a second, the Bible's no more fucked up than actual real life. So why am I questioning it? Our world is just as weird as the Bible. So I don't know. I haven't decided
Different place. Yeah.
what's
So,
true, what's not.
my question then about reincarnation, there is not a single God in the Hindu religion. So is God himself from the beginning reincarnating every time that Krishna comes along and Vedas comes along and Selsha comes along, and there's all this long line of gods? And they keep talking about being the avatar of the previous god or some previous god in the past.
I thought they were saying that those gods are aspects of God, but like it's all still God. It's the one God, but these different gods just represent
It takes on all these different personalities.
just aspects of God, but not that they're separate from. Sort of like our body. We have an arm and a leg and a face, and like they're all aspects of our body, but they're all still a part of our body. And that's how I imagine it.
So I guess like Christ showing up 1,000 years later in another form, Christ showing up today in another form.
Yeah,
the Hindu people look at all these different personas then as their God talking to them. And how many times we've watched and seen in the world today that people claim they are the new coming Christ. They are the savior coming to save the world. And they turn out to be cult leaders who really were in it for themselves, So that's always been my question. If Jesus walked up to me today, would I accept him? Would I know it was him? How would I know it was him?
As far as the Bible goes, I think that's where the whole forgiveness thing comes in. Like that's where the whole I'm gonna die for you because you're already gonna screw up. I'm already gonna come to you and you're not gonna know it's me. That's already happening. So I'm gonna die for your sins because there's no way around it.
Mhm.
Here's an interesting concept from the workshop that I was just in, and I've heard this before too. So if you do something good because your goal is to be a good person, is it actually selfless if you're doing it for the sake of earning the title of being a good person? Like you're still doing it with you in mind. You're still doing it with like, I want to be a good person. So I'm going to go do this because it's going to make me a good person. Like I thought that was like super interesting because it's a mind fuck. Like, yeah, I've done a lot of things in my life to earn the title good person. I've given a lot of things in my life to get love or respect in return. But I believe we're supposed to give simply for the sake of giving without the expectation of I'm going to be deemed a good person. I think we're supposed to do things with no expectation of what we get in return. And I don't even think that's possible until you realize that those are two separate things.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So I think all of us have to start over.
Starting right now.
Okay, starting right now.
I think it's very freeing to proportion, like to have that conversation with yourself before you do something, like embark into like a kind act of service or whatever, and just kind of mark your placement in it, like no strings. Like this is whatever it is because I feel compelled in this moment, and I will be grateful to feel great about this after the fact, but I'm not going to attach myself to any expectation because then you're kind of looking over your shoulder wondering who noticed or how grateful they are, you know? And so I find it very freeing to be unattached from that because, for example, not to sell my husband out, but it's just an example. Like I've always been that auntie that I remember my nieces and nephews' birthdays and I do it because I want to. And I just send them a card in the mail and I'll put a little bit of money in it and off it goes. And it's just standard procedure. Well, my husband a few years ago was like, so did so and so thank you for that card? Or did so and so's kid, or did your sister have their kid call you to say, or send a note to say thanks, or his brother and their kids? And he just got really fixated on whether there was gratitude expressed upon receiving these cards in the mail. And I was just like, yes, no, some of them do, some of them don't, but I don't care. It doesn't matter to me because I do it because I choose to do it. And so it was just an interesting thing because he got after his brother for not making it a practice for his kids to say thank you to me when I sent them cards. And it kind of upset me because then I felt like there was this extra whenever they got a card. Oh, great. Now I have to say thank you. It's like, I don't want people to say thank you because they feel like they have to. I don't even have an attachment to it. And so all of a sudden I felt like it cheapened what I was doing because all of a sudden it looked as if I did have that connection to the whole big reason of why I was doing what I was doing. And so it's just an example, but I think it's just very freeing to just do it, like kind of just let the balloon go into the air, just set it free. And wherever it lands, it might make someone smile. It might not, but it felt good to do it.
I think that's the point of the detachment.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're supposed to do it because God would like that. God would like us to do that, but we're not doing it for our personal outcome. We're doing it because we're trying to stay aligned with serving the Lord.
And I don't really think it's even like he wants us to do it because he's like, oh, good, I've got another little soldier totally trained. I don't have to worry about him anymore. I think it's like he wants us to have, he, she, it, the source wants us to have the most impact of each experience, or be able to experience like the full immersion of what that experience was supposed to provide, instead of just like a little dabble on the surface. And so I think it's not so much that like you have to do this or I'm going to see you as less than, or really have this big connection to worry about you, but it's just a matter of, if you're going to do it, why not go all in? Like go big or go home kind of thing.
But if the goal is to merge back with God, I feel like there is an expectation. And so like in my head, I'm picturing it like I have two brothers and they're homeless drug addicts, and we have Thanksgiving coming, and in my brain I'm like, God, one of them is still like, you can have normal conversations with him. He's weird, but not like the other one who freaks out and talks about different planets and weird shit. So the one that is still normal, I'm kind of like, man, like part of me really wants to invite him for Thanksgiving because he just lives in a dirt lot by himself, right? Just seems like the godly thing to do. Mm-hmm. But I don't want him here because he's still like, the biggest reason honestly is to send him away when it's over. Like, here, go back to your dirt lot. Like, that is so hard for me. I just don't even want to deal with the discomfort of that moment because I can't rationalize through other than your presence makes me and my family uncomfortable. And I guess what I'm getting at is like, what if God is saying, until you can be like me, you're not welcome in my home, meaning us rejoining him in the light, where we go and we take after the winter solstice, we take the southern route back to, this is what the book is talking about. We take the northern route back to God. We go back to God, but God's like, oh no, you still don't do things the way I do things. You still don't give without attachment. You still have expectations of others. So until you are like me, I can't merge with you. And it kind of reminds me of like what's happening with my brother. I'm like, if you're not going to just like be a somewhat normal person who can take care of yourself and stop leeching off of everybody and bringing everybody down, then you can't merge back with us. And I just wonder if that's kind of what this is saying. Like, if we can't just behave like God, love like God, do like God, then we're not ready to merge back with him because we'll muddy the waters. Go ahead, Katie.
See, that's hard, and that's where a question comes up for me is like, where do you draw your boundaries? Because it's does everybody deserve the kindness just because they're one of God's people? Or are we supposed to protect ourselves to some degree? Just like your situation with your brother, it's like, where do you draw those boundaries of like, yes, I want to treat you with kindness, but at the same time, I have my family here and you make us uncomfortable, and I don't want my family uncomfortable. So it's very hard, like when you brought that up, it's like, yeah, how would Krishna answer that?
Well,
Who deserves it, and are there supposed to be boundaries? I don't know.
That makes me wonder if that's what Krishna is doing with us. Like, until you learn to detach from this stuff, you cannot merge back with me, because it's just, maybe he's protecting himself from that.
Page 177 at the bottom. We talked about this, I think, last week. All those who take refuge in me, whatever their birth, race, sex, or caste, will attain the supreme goal. This realization can be attained even by whom society scorns. Kings and sages, too, seek this goal with devotion. Therefore, having been born in this transient and forlorn world, give all your love to me. Fill your mind with me, love me, serve me, worship me always. Seeking me in your heart, you will at last be united with me. And I think when I was listening to the John Peter on YouTube, he said, think of Gandhi. And Gandhi reached out to all the needy. He went out of his way, and he went to the outcasts and those who had the greatest need. And he did it with great compassion, alleviating some of their suffering. And then he likened it to, think of what Jesus said. Jesus said, feed my lambs, take care of my lambs. And the weakest ones are the ones that need you the most. Whereas the big, healthy, full-on, sheep are there and pouncing all over and stealing the food and whatever, because they're, the mighty and the strong, but take care of my lambs. So I'm just throwing that out there. And I don't know what I would do in your situation either. The first thing I thought was, if you wanted to maybe possibly create a relationship there again, what if you took him a plate of Thanksgiving meal and say, I'll see you next week? And don't just do it for Thanksgiving, but then next week, maybe take him a Burger King meal, or pick up a pizza and hand it over to him, so that you're kind of helping him.
I mean,
But-
I've done that for years. He lives 2 hours away from me. So
he does. Oh,
yeah.
I thought he was nearby. Sorry.
Oh, no. I've done that for years. Actually, the last time I went to see him and bring him food, and I would always give him $100. I brought my fiance, who has never been exposed to anything like that. And it took him a month to get over it. He was like, I've never seen anything like it in my life. And I'm like, I know. It's really, really sad. It's like, until you go and experience it, you just don't. It's one thing to see homeless people you don't know on the street. That's hard enough. But then you go see somebody who you shared life with, and you knew them before they had been taken down by their choices.
Right.
And yeah, it's another level of pain to witness that. And I can't, which honestly, one of the reasons I love believing in Jesus and believing I'm forgiven is that helps me detach from the guilt and the sorrow and the, like, I'm not a good girl feeling, because of my belief in Jesus, I can let go of that, and I can be indifferent, and I can just let him be responsible for his choices, help where I can, and just focus on who I can help.
And does he have an attitude of, I'll take help if I can get it? Or is he one of those? I have many homeless people who kind of live in and around my town and in my shopping plaza and in my bushes along my building. And you try to offer them help, you offer them suggestions, you offer them a couple icy cold bottles of water on a hot day, because you see them sitting out there trying, they're just dripping, and they don't want it. All they want is money. They want money so they can go get their next fix. And they don't want help, and they don't want a number to call, and they don't want to go to the shelter. And even if you offer to take them, they don't want your help.
Oh yeah.
They just want money for the next fix.
Yeah, mine are somewhere in between that, but I've done that too. I've spent an entire day running around trying to save homeless people, and at the end of the day, it's exactly,
they don't appreciate
they
it.
don't want your help. They
They don't want your help.
They want what their idea of help is.
Right. Exactly.
They don't want your idea of help. And that is one of the biggest problems. That's how they ended up there. They think they're right.
I agree.
They don't listen to other people.
We think that we're right in deciding that we know what they need. And I think that there's a lot to be said about, if you are stirred internally to go and be of some sort of form of love, or to be love for a person on the streets, or bless your brother's hearts, your two brothers on, in their situations, Shauna, or whatever. It's like, I think that it's more about really connecting and dialing into what compels you, like what are you feeling, instead of just like this overall great need to protect you and yours and your environment and sheltering those around you from that exposure. Maybe it's more about, I keep on going again and again, just meet them where they are. Like, it's maybe they don't want to be in your home. Maybe that's uncomfortable for them. Maybe all they really need is something like, hey, I was thinking about you. I love you. I don't even know if a plate of food is really helpful. Um, I don't know. Like, I don't even know if there's a way to really know what their needs are, but I don't believe there's a soul out there that couldn't use a hug or just an expression of love, or I see you, I know you, I still acknowledge you.
Would not want to hug this person.
It's
But
not that easy.
yeah, no. It's
Hug.
it's definitely not. It's definitely not that easy. Yeah, no, I don't feel like I'm not in a quandary about it. I'm
Yeah.
totally, it just reminded me of like in relation to God allowing us back into merging with him. It's like I think there are expectations that need to be met. I think we have to merge with him when we are like him. Like it's just like a natural, like if I wanted to become one with air, I would have to become air. I think it's like that. If I want to become one with God, then I have to become godlike. Katie, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here listening to you guys, and when you said the whole, well, they don't want my help, they want something else, and I kind of had the thought of, does that go back to the detachment? Like, are you supposed to act with kindness towards them regardless of their reaction? Is that what Krishna or God would want? Is you help them in whatever way that you see fit? Because I mean, like Hani said, like, for instance, everybody could use a hug, and if you're homeless, you could probably use a bottle of water, whether you want it or not.
Mhm.
You are coming from a good place, trying to help them. So if you detach from how they react to you, wouldn't you be acting as Krishna wanted you to? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think if as far as my specific situation goes, my mom brings him food pretty regularly. So that gives me comfort. I'm like, okay, she's bringing him food. She knows, that he knows that she loves him. I think that maybe this is an attachment that I have, but one of the ways that I rationalize out of the pain or sorrow of the suffering that they're enduring in their life is like, sometimes I think, man, am I just abandoning them? And then I think they abandoned us. Like, why do I have to run around feeling like I'm the one that abandoned them when they're the ones that abandoned us? And when I think of it that way, it's kind of like, I don't feel like it's on me. It's not on me to go save them, and I've done plenty of bringing food and water, and I feel I've done plenty of that. Who knows what it is in God's eyes. But I mean, for me, the best thing I can do is, I think, Katie, I think you're kind of hitting the nail on the head. I think really detachment is the best thing I can do. If I'm put in a situation where I can be of service, just loving them, just loving them right here and now, I feel is an act of love. just knowing that I want the best for them, knowing that if I ever were in their presence, that I would love them and treat them with respect. I mean, not so much my little brother, because he's, I don't even know like what is going on. Like if demons are real, there's one in there. Like I don't know what to do with that. But you know, I think even like they say, the best gift we can give the world is to work on ourselves. So even me, like my biggest goal in life is that I make enough money to be able to affect change in our school systems and potentially build some kind of homeless facilities that are more of a wraparound service that really come at the problem from like a holistic, you know, angle. And but ultimately my goal would be to affect change in the school systems, because the school systems are really who's having such like the biggest impact on our children. And the school systems a lot of times say, no, it's the families. But I think anybody with a brain, no offense to anybody who disagrees with me here, but like anybody with a brain knows that we have decades and centuries and generations of toxic people who continue to have children and make more toxic people who continue to have children and make more toxic people. So we cannot count on the families to fix our world's problems, because the families are generations of toxic beliefs and that they're injecting that into our children. The school is the only place where kids who are coming from toxic environments can come and be redirected, but the schools are not taking the initiative, and they're doing it here and there, but they're not doing it again from a holistic angle. And it really needs to start from the bottom up. And so, you know, that would be my dream. That would be what my experience and my trauma has ignited in me. So the best thing I can do is take care of me and give to my family and just do the best I can to work toward my goal. And that's how I would help my brothers. It would be less about helping them personally and more about helping the problem, the bigger problem. We're like 20 minutes over and talking about personal stuff. Go ahead, honey.
In relation to what we've been talking about and why, you know, why Krishna says what he says and why we believe the way we believe about the gods in our lives. So you know, and that's a good example. That's a good example to look at and to think about, because there are so many of them, and it's a growing population, and it's not just here in California, it's all over the world. I mean, I drive through the streets of the French cities and there are encampments under the trees and along the rivers and the boats, and you know, it's just, unfortunately, the group that I tend to meet up with most often is camped on my front store doorstep, because we have the end of the sidewalk and we have a little alcove there where they like to spend the night and get out of the rain, that sort of thing. And I don't begrudge them that, but when it's store hour time and you can't open your door because their carts are pushed up against your entrance door, you know, you have to somehow reach them and explain to them that you had your chance, you've been here all evening, but now you have to move on. But they're so high, you can't reason with them. They're so in a world like this that you just can't talk to them. And they don't respond appropriately because they're just angry that you're interrupting their high or whatever it is that they're going through at the moment. And then they get very, they get abusive and they get loud and they get, you know, they're nasty. They use nasty language and call you all kinds of names, because what are you trying to tell them what to do for? Well, you know what? I hate to say it, but you're trespassing. You're on my property. You are hindering my business. You need to move on and at least just get off the sidewalk and go over there somewhere or move down that way. But don't just sit here, because now you're causing a problem for me and my business. And they don't appreciate that. And then when they don't leave and I need help, I call the police station because I need somebody to move these people out of the way so we can run a computer business. And I feel guilty every time I do that.
You shouldn't feel guilty. See, it's a mental health crisis.
It is.
And you
Absolutely.
shouldn't even be dealing with them at all. You should just go straight to the police. Like,
Yeah.
you shouldn't even try to engage, because once they get on their drugs,
Mhm.
it started as a mental health problem, but then the drugs add to it, and they're not even who they are. You're not
No,
even
they are.
dealing with them anymore. So it's just, I actually think this is good that we even started talking about this, because what is the point of studying this if we don't know how to apply it to real life?
Mhm.
And this is real life. This is what we're dealing with. Go ahead, honey.
I was just gonna say, in kind of aligned with the topic of homelessness, but also just in general, whenever we see a void in society or a need or a gap of some sort, that I don't believe that situation was put in front of us, because that's just yet another opportunity that we need to take the time to seize and rescue whatever in front of us. I think that so much of our exposure to all sorts of layers of life um, are just ways to keep us in a place of awareness to the bigger picture of service. That it's not so much that I have to serve this very thing in front of me, or that I need to, or that I should. It's that the innate goodness inside of me is saying, I can do better. And this is a visual for me to re-engage in that placement or whatever. And so it's kind of like love is circular. It's like you give love and there might be an expectation. Like if I show love to this person, then they surely must be, you know, compelled to show it back to me. But really it's not that that same person that you're sharing with is the one that's going to share back with you. It's just that energetic connection to giving is full circle. Like it shares, service shares. And so again, detachment from that, doing it because it feels right for you, to you, inside of you, and then letting it go and allowing yourself to have those moments of reflection in gratitude so that you can realize the circle and how it did come back to you, not because you were sitting there expecting it, but because you're reflecting and realizing, oh my gosh, I am so grateful for this and that and this. And I'm also grateful that I was able to give this or that. Now I see this full action in my life and how anchoring it is. And it's without any kind of connection to believing that it must be tit for tat. You did this, so therefore I need to do this back. It's not that. It's about allowing yourself to freely move in love and in service and to be driven in those moments that you really feel a high level charge to full throttle in that moment, that direction, or just in general, reframing your reference back to service. And I think that's a bigger piece that resonates inside of me than the have tos and the shoulds and the musts and the merits and all that kind of stuff. It's one of the reasons why I struggle with organized religion personally, because I feel like it's never enough. Oh, here we go. There's another thing. Oh, I fucked up on that. Oh, all right. And it's just a personal thing. I feel so, for me, there's such a freedom in just allowing the universe to speak to me in any moment at any time, and then acting in the way that feels right to me, not because a script told me to do it or that I have to in order to attain blankety blank. I think that I don't know if that I don't mean to sound sacrilegious or like offend anybody, but I feel like there's so much out there to connect with that might not be a specific must or should that is defined inside of a sacred text.
Think
I don't
that's
know if that
fair. And I think that a lot of us can agree with you. Like, I'm a Jesus lover, but I'm not a Christian.
Mhm.
And I think it's okay to sound sacrilegious. And I think it's okay to offend people, because if they're offended, it's not because you shared your piece, it's because of their own resistance to that which contradicts their beliefs. And
Yeah.
typically, if they're freaked out by somebody's contradicting belief, it's because their own belief is actually not as stable as maybe they wish it was. So you don't have to apologize for sharing your truth at all. And I think this whole conversation has led me to this understanding right now of a lot of things I do because I'm trying to connect with God. I want to connect. It's that same old, I want to be the good girl motivation. And this conversation is making me realize that if this were the truth, and that's what I'm exploring, that's what we're exploring right now. We're just exploring the truth of this. So if this were the truth, and that we're going to merge with God when we die, I guess for me, what's happening is that everything I do because I'm trying to serve God is nothing more than a merit. Whereas if I just do it because I have embodied that kind of love, now I'm on to something.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it to earn the merit. I'm not doing it to be the good girl or to end up merging with God. I'm doing it because I have embodied that type of love and compassion. And
that's what I'm saying right there.
I think that's what this is getting at. I think it's like, until you have embodied these concepts, you're going to have to keep learning.
Really quick before we stop, can I share something that is aligned with meditation and prayer? But I heard it from Jay this week and it just really made sense.
Yeah.
It's about, he just said it was very simple and I just loved it. He was talking about connection. And he said that prayer, when we pray, and he was very, just universal about it. It wasn't just like a certain God, but just when we pray to the divine, whatever we label that divine source, and connect universally. And what we are doing is we are downloading to our source all the things, all the thankfuls, all the problems, all the whatevers that are coming out of us, and all the please and bless and do this and help me not do that or whatever. It's all downloads, our personal downloads. And then we just, we dump it all into the system. And many people, if they kneel to pray or whatever they do, it's like, okay, all right, I'm done, on my way. I prayed and I've connected. And he said the other 50% of that, the other half of that is the upload, and that is our meditation. And so we talked about how many of us perhaps are, feel so great because we are constantly downloading to God. But that's only half of the conversation. And so to practice our meditation and those moments of quiet and stillness is our way to listen to our source, to our divine connection and what that is trying to say. And so for whatever reason, that picture in my mind just made so much more sense. It's like how often we have conversations with people and we feel like we're talking to a wall. Like they're not even listening. And you might not realize it until you're halfway through and you're like, I just wasted 15 minutes of my breath and my time because that person I realize now wasn't even listening. And so it's kind of the same thing. It's like when we're praying or whatever we do to communicate, like are we just connected to that aspect, or are we also remembering to listen? And I think it can go the other way too, where are we listening, but are we not really dialoguing? Because I think sometimes it can be really hyper-focused on just the meditation and speak to me, but have we really taken the time to cultivate that relationship and make it personal and make it ours? And so anyway, if that paints a picture that makes more sense to any of you, maybe it was worth sharing, but just the whole upload and download that really kind of caught my attention in a different way. I hadn't heard it referenced that way.
Yeah,
And
that's really cool.
So
Thanks for sharing that. I think that's a really cool thought to end this on. Does anybody else have anything to share before we say our goodbyes? Nah.
happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.
I'm grateful for my Gita group.
Me too.
You know, you were saying you didn't know if you should say something or you didn't know if it would. remember we said this is a safe space. We can think our thoughts, we can put them out there and trust that the others in this group are going to consider it and think about it and look at it and compare it and maybe discuss it. And so that's why I keep showing up. It's a nice safe space. I like being with you ladies too. I'm grateful for all three of you.
Me too.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thanks for always showing up, girls.
Yeah, it keeps getting smaller and smaller, doesn't it?
I feel like this is it. Like, I don't think it can get smaller. I think we're here.
We're the regulars. There's a few stragglers.
Yeah, the stragglers, I think, are watching the videos because I see them comment later in the week or later in the day or whatever saying, wow, that was really good. Thanks for sharing all that, you know? So I just wonder where the initial crowd disappeared to. I guess because maybe the time of day or whatever.
Launchpad.
Right. It
Yeah,
might
Launchpad too.
Life.
Katie and I are here.
Yep. We got you.
It's all good. That's awesome. All
All
right.
right,
Well,
ladies.
my goal is to get 10 and 11 done. So we'll see.
Sounds good.
All right.
Bye.
be. Thank
Bye,
you.
guys.
Have a good one.